I consult.
Hi everybody. I am with Jennifer Christie, and I'm going to call her Jen. And it's a very big privilege for me to be able to interview her. You're going to be learning about her story as I'm learning about her story. I have been impressed with what I have seen online, her heart and passion for life, a very difficult choice that she has made, and her love for life. So Jennifer, welcome to VitaArt.
Thank you so much. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yes,
we've been trying to do this for a while.
For months, yes.
Yes.
This is the right time.
Yes.
I was drawn to you because you're artistic, and I'm artistic, and I saw your beautiful signing and the way you portray life. You have a very unique story. You've had trauma, and you chose life. So I'd like for you to tell us what happened.
I feel more like life chose me. So my story it starts in 2014, sort of the year my life changed. When people ask about life beforehand, I say that things were sort of status quo. There wasn't anything particularly exciting. My husband and I married as teenagers. We'd had 4 kids together, and we were living a very suburban kind of life, ballet lessons and soccer practice and all of that kind of thing. And we were a 2-career family. And I am a sign language interpreter, and I did a lot of travel for work. I less so now because life has taken a strange and unique turn. But back in those days, I was traveling a lot for freelance interpreting. And in January of 2014, sorry, I'm fidgeting. I always fidget when I tell my story. In January of 2014, I had taken a 2-week-long assignment that was out of town. And I was driving back and forth at first, and then
was that in South America?
Oh, no. I hold on. I'll get there.
Okay.
No, this was in North Carolina. It started stateside. And it was just a few hours away, but it was one of those overnight job training things. And so I was leaving at like midnight, and then working all night, and then driving back in the morning. And we did that for a week, and then the weekend comes and I'm a bear. And my husband's like, why don't you stay up there the second week? It's like, I'm worried about you on the road. I was falling asleep, and I have a tendency to crash our cars. And he's like, you need to stay. This is not safe. Let's put you in a hotel. You can rest, and take baths by yourself. At the time, I had, 4 kids, everyone's banging on the door. There's no time to yourself.
Time to yourself. I get that. Yes.
That sounded very appealing, and that sounded great. So that's what we did. And I only mention that because I think to this day, when we speak, sometimes I can hear that he still carries guilt, that he was the one who suggested a hotel, that he was the one who picked a hotel that he thought would be safe. And so it was a very rural area. And so it was like a no-name hotel. It was one of those places that are like a bunch of little outside units. And it's the last day of this 2-week-long assignment, and work let out early because it snowed, and it was near the beach. And so it never ever got snow. And it was just this kind of unique, magical thing that was happening. And everyone was like all aflutter. And I loved it. I love snow. And I remember driving back to the hotel and just thinking what a special kind of treat that was. And it was peaceful and serene. And there was nothing about the day that kind of let me know that this was going to be the day that changed my whole life. And
calm before the storm.
Right. Yes, exactly. The calm before the storm. And so I get to the hotel parking lot, and it's a ghost town. Everyone had cleared out pretty much. And I'm getting ready to go to my room, and I'm doing everything they tell women who are traveling alone not to do. I'm blocking my peripheral vision with a big hood, and I'm wrapping a scarf around my face so I can't hear anything. And I say that not to victim blame, but just because I was not aware at all of my surroundings, and we really should be. But I think between the wind and the cold and my not paying attention, I didn't know I was being followed. And I get to my room, which opened to the outside right by the parking lot, which is also not particularly safe. And I had my arms full of, I don't remember what, my bags, something, and I dropped things to the floor, and I turn around to close the door, and there's a man in my doorway. And I kind of startled because I don't expect to see anyone there, but I don't feel afraid at first. And maybe it was that he was so young, and like he could have been one of my daughter's friends. She was 17 at the time. And or maybe it was just that he didn't look scary. You know, in this time of Hollywood movies and things, our villains look scary, and he didn't. He just looked like a genial college kid. And I thought maybe he needs help. Maybe he thought maybe he got the wrong room or something. And it feels like 100 different things kind of go through my mind. But it couldn't have been more than a second or two. And he kind of gives me this weird look and punches me in the head. And we talk a lot about fight or flight, you know, in those moments of terror, but we don't talk about freeze nearly as much. And I think freeze is a lot more common. And I froze because this is not something that happens in real life. You know, this is not something that happens to you. This is what you see on the news, and this is Lifetime movies, and this is not going to happen. And then my fight kicked in, and I did what I could. He had a good foot on me, maybe 100 pounds. And I heard before I felt my ribs break and my fingers break. And I tried to separate what was happening to my body and kind of crawl somewhere deep inside myself. And I remember thinking over and over, I just kept saying, whatever's happening to my body, he can't touch my soul. He can't touch my soul. And that was kind of how I got through it. And then at some point I lost consciousness. And the next thing I remember, I heard a woman screaming, and I couldn't tell if it was me at first. It wasn't. But I felt really, really cold. And I opened my eyes, and I was outside in the back of the hotel. There was this stairwell outside kind of leading to the dumpsters. And I was kind of thrown back there on the stairs, and I was in the snow, and I realized I wasn't wearing much. This woman was leaning over me, covering me with her coat, and she's crying. And I remember trying to move and realizing I was really hurt. And I didn't understand what happened at the time. I just remembered fighting. And things would,
you had blocked out.
I just couldn't. I had a brain bleed, which I didn't know. So I was seeing flashes. I didn't quite understand. There was just a tremendous amount of pain in my head and my chest. I thought maybe I'd been shot, but it was my broken ribs. It was pain. It was just blinding pain and fear and confusion. And I remember looking for my kids and looking for my husband, who wasn't there, but I didn't know what was going on. And in the hospital, they treated me for the broken bones and internal damage, which we talked about. I've had 11 surgeries now to kind of fix what was just destroyed. And the brain bleed left me with a seizure disorder. So it was just this horrific nightmare. And in the aftermath of that, my husband and I, who had been believers since we were kids, we grew up together in the church, we didn't know how to process something this evil that's come to our doorstep.
And Jen, I'm going to put it into words. You were raped.
Yes, I was raped. Yes, I was. Yes. And we didn't, when something like that happens, I mean, you hear about it happening and you see the news, but there is definitely an element of why me, you know, and
you had lived a good life. You did the right things. And why could this evil touch you?
Yeah. And I know as believers, we're not immune from the world, but there's still such an anger that as human beings, we can do that to each other. And I was so mad, and I didn't know where to direct it or what to do. My husband was trying to put on a bright face, and God is going to get us through this, and we're going to be okay. And I remember thinking, we're not going to be okay. And I could hear him in the shower, like sobbing and punching the walls. And then he'd come out with his knuckles bleeding and he'd touch my face and he'd be like, well, we're all right. Like, we're not all right. You're not all right. And I'm not all right. And how are we ever going to survive with this weight of rage and anger and pain? And it just didn't seem, it was so hard to just breathe through it all.
And Jennifer, when did you find out you were pregnant?
So I wasn't talking to anybody. I couldn't bear to tell my mother, who I was very close to. She had just left the state, and I didn't want to tell her over the phone when she couldn't see me or touch me. And so there was no way Jeff could tell his parents if I hadn't told my mother, because if she found out his parents knew before she did, that would be a scene. And I couldn't face my children. How do you tell them? So we told them I was in a car accident. And so I just wasn't talking to anyone. I was holed up in the house. And about 6 weeks after this attack, I was scheduled to interpret on a cruise. And I hadn't called the agency to tell them, look, this horrible thing happened, I can't go. And so the longer I waited to tell them I can't go, the harder it would have been to be replaced. And so 6 weeks down the road, bones knit and bruises fade, and I'm doing okay physically. Mentally, I'm a wreck. And Jeff is like, maybe you should go. You're going to be there. 4 other interpreters, 3 other interpreters are scheduled. There's a big group of deaf people. You love your work. You love interpreting cruises. I've done a handful in my career. You're not okay here. You're not doing well. You're in your head all the time. You're scared. You're not eating. You're not sleeping. Go do your job. Like, he's taken enough from us. Like, we have to figure out a way to keep living. And that made sense to me. So I packed a bag. I did my job, and day 2, it was a 10-day excursion, which is the longest I've ever been gone. And I get really, really sick, and they figure it's dysentery, and they can handle that. And so I'm quarantined in the medical unit of this cruise, and they're giving me antibiotics, and I'm not getting better. And they don't understand why I'm not getting better. Usually that works. And so this little doctor comes in, and she's like, we need to give you something stronger. We're going to give you an IV, something. Is there any chance you could be pregnant? And my knee jerk was no. My youngest was 8, and we were done with that. I'd had really rough pregnancies, and Jeff took one for the team, got himself snipped, and no chance at all. Pregnancy had not been a thought for a really long time. And so right after I say, oh, no, I'm not, I just kind of stop, and the world sort of slows down. And I hear myself say for the first time, I was raped about 6 weeks ago. You might want to give me a test. And I hadn't used that word before. And I talk to women now who still won't use that word. They'll say attacked, assaulted, whatever. But saying raped is so definitive, and it's such an ugly, heavy word. And it just kind of sat there, just like between us for a second. And the doctor was kind of stunned, and she kind of shook herself, and she's like, all right, let's test you. And she did. And it was positive. And I remember holding that test, and then she gave me another one. I think the doctor was more upset than I was. And so now I'm holding 2 positive pregnancy tests, and I sort of kind of collapse in on myself, and I'm rocking back and forth. And I just keep saying, what am I going to do? And I wasn't even thinking about a baby. I was just thinking, how am I going to tell people? What am I going to say? How do you begin to say?
And tell your husband.
Right. There were so much to tell. And she was like, well, wait, we have to, let's get you an ultrasound. You've been really sick. You've been in pain. The baby could be in the tube. There could be an obstruction. So many things could be wrong. We're going to make an emergency stop. Tomorrow, we're going to be in Cartagena, Colombia. So that's where, and we're going to get you an ultrasound. Fine.
Lived there. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It reminded me a lot of downtown San Diego, where Jeff and I met and lived for quite a while. It's Spanish, and it's music, and it's colorful, and so I'm
beautiful.
I'm in Cartagena, and I'm in a country that I don't know, surrounded by people that I don't know, speaking a language I don't speak. And I'm almost 40 at this time, and I'm on a table, and they're pulling over an ultrasound again. And I'm just like, this is completely surreal. Nothing about this is my life. And they're doing the ultrasound, and I'm staring at that screen, and everything kind of comes into place, and I'm looking at this little dot on the screen. And I had a translator there with me, and he's starting to talk, and I kind of hold up my hand because I know what I'm looking at. I've had enough children. I know what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of bracing myself, and I'm waiting to feel what you would expect to feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think most women in our culture at some point have thought about, especially if you're pro-life, what would I do if I became pregnant from rape? I think most of us have run that scenario through our minds, at least at some point. I know I had. And so I'm waiting to feel what I thought I would feel, like rage or disgust or anger or something. I'm waiting for that to come. And I'm staring at this screen, and I start to smile because what rushes through me is just this feeling of joy and light. And it was the first time I smiled since the attack, because I remember thinking, God still sees me, and I couldn't protect myself. This was such a clear thought. It was in a whirlwind of emotion. I couldn't protect myself. I fought, I tried, but I couldn't. But that baby I can protect. And that was a game changer for me. Just seeing him, I was like, okay, kid, it's you and me. I have goosebumps. That moment was so profound. I wasn't alone anymore, and it was going to be okay. And I had
in the midst
something.
of that horrible violation and violence, there's life, an
Right.
innocent life.
And a new beginning.
Yes. That's part of you.
And that's the thing. And he was just, I never was like, oh, there's a part of, there's rape spawn, there's a rapist deposit, I need to get rid of. It was just, that's my baby. And
what about women that will say, but you will be reminded of the rape the rest of your life?
Yeah, I find that really interesting.
You chose
yeah,
to have him. Yeah.
How is it that you would forget about the rape ever? There is, child or no child, you will never ever forget what happened to you. That rape lives with you every day in a million different ways, in something that you smell in the air, in the back of someone's head that makes you think of something, in a sound that brings you back to that day. There are a million different reminders that I wish we could just eradicate, that would take that, that rape away. But that stays with you. But the child is a beautiful, loving, wonderful reminder of, for me, Joshua is his name. Joshua is a reminder of my resilience. Joshua is a reminder of God's grace. Joshua is a reminder of redemption, of healing, of beauty for ashes. He's a reminder of everything good that can come from darkness.
I have seen some videos that you have posted, and the joy on his face. He is such a delight.
He is the happiest kid I've ever known. And when you talk to him, I mean, he knows the basis. We can talk about this a little bit, but he knows sort of the foundation of his story. He knows that a bad man hurt mommy, and the family was very sad, but, the bad man planted a seed, and we found out we were pregnant, and, and God gave him to us, and daddy picked him because he was so wonderful, and he came and he healed our family, and he gave us back our happy when we were so sad, and it makes him, Joshua just gets a big smile, and he's like, I'm the hero of the family, and God made me. And like, he knows that. One of our followers of the page sent him a cape that says Super Joshy, and he loves it. He wears it everywhere. But he knows that he's special, and he knows that he was given to us to bring us back together, to glue us back together when we had been so broken. And just that's, and over and over and over, that's what I hear from mothers who had children after rape, that they were in such a dark place, and then this little light ultrasound. And they may not have the same initial reaction that I did. They may not have the same initial joy, but again and again, it's when they see the baby, it's when they see the ultrasound, when it's that connection that, oh, that's mine, that's my baby, and that baby and I, we can make it through this.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. And I have heard other women talk about those when they chose to have an abortion. They have said, I have been able to heal from the rape and work through forgiveness of my attacker, but to forgive myself for ending the life of an innocent, my innocent child is so much deeper and grievous and
yeah.
difficult.
I've yet to speak at an event where someone has not come up to me afterwards, just absolutely sobbing, talking about their abortion after rape. It's never been the rape that's still wrecking them. And sometimes it's decades and decades later, it's the abortion that stays with them.
Right.
And so when people, accuse me of, you're hating on women or you're whatever, I'm like, that is so not true. I'm trying to prevent that.
Yes,
And that
you're
brokenness.
honoring the gift that we have of being able to be mothers. That is an amazing privilege that we underestimate. Yes.
No, I agree. And so this is one of my favorite parts of the story. And Jeff and I were just on just did another bit for Focus on the Family, and when we shared this part, the two men at the table were crying and breaking down more than anybody else, which I loved, because every time I tell this part, if Jeff is speaking with me or if he comes with me to an event, he's a mess. He's crying. He can't take it.
Well, I want to hear it.
This is our favorite part. So
I have my tissue.
Going back to the ship, I have to call him because we had been emailing, and he knew I was sick, but that's all he knew. And this was not an email conversation, right? But I had to tell him. So someone was like, here, you can use the captain's quarters, a doctor's lounge, whatever it was. Make a phone call your husband. So I did, and I was like, "Are you sitting down?" Just a great, it's going to be good news when someone asks you that right off the bat. Are you sitting down? That's all I said. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm pregnant." And there was just a half a second, just a beat of silence. And then he said, "Okay." And I said, "Okay, what?" Like, it's not, I need more from you. Okay is not enough. And he just said, "Sweetheart, this is a gift." He said, "This is something beautiful from something so terrible and painful for us." He said, "We love babies." And my heart just exhaled. And I said, "Yeah, we love babies." And he said, "We can do this. This will be awesome, Jay. We can do this." And I said, "Okay."
What a man.
And that was it. And I knew that would be his response. I was surprised at how well he articulated it, because I know his heart and I know who he is, but sometimes foot in mouth, and I just, but it was so perfect. And it was just what I needed to hear. Cause it was just like, this is our baby and this is going to be great. And we love babies. And, that response has generated some interesting conversations. And there are people who've gotten really mad, who've been just like, "Oh, he was just like, oh, whatever." And I'm like, he wasn't like, "Oh, whatever." We were destroyed. Like, things were a wreck. That put us on solid ground again. Like, we were floundering, but it was like, babies we knew, babies we understood, babies we loved. It's like, we didn't know what to do with this horrific violation. We didn't know how to move forward, but it was like, God gave us this child and we were like, okay, now we know how to handle pregnancy. We know how to do babies. Now we have something tangible to look forward to together. Like, this brought us back. This saved us. We're like, okay, we can do this.
How did it affect your other children?
They were great. I mean, first of all, they didn't know anything. They just knew another sibling was coming. They're like, "Oh, great, less room." I mean, they were like, I hope my daughter was like, "Please, God, be a sister." And but they were wonderful. Things got rough for us. I was put on bed rest pretty much immediately. And so I was the primary breadwinner. We lost our house. We ended up moving in with my in-laws. We didn't know, we talked to the police a few times. We didn't know who attacked me. If he had been targeting me, we ended up leaving the state just for safety reasons. I didn't feel safe. So things were bad. So they had to know. My daughter my daughter knew. I'm sorry. I told my daughter she was old enough, and she was old enough to remember her dad having a vasectomy. So she had to know.
Oh, yes.
The others found out incrementally. And they were wonderful. They were upset about the attack. When it came to, and that's how Joshua came with us, they were like, oh, okay. Like you don't care. And
Yeah.
they were like, why does it matter?
Brother. Yeah.
Yeah. They were like, why does it matter? Like, it doesn't really. They're like, he's our brother. And we're like, right. They're like, why are you even telling us? I don't know. Because some people care. I don't know. But it mattered not at all to them, and still doesn't, except for they get a little more defensive of him. Because we are so public. And so I have to keep them off social media because they will be inappropriate with some of the nasty comments. Especially my teenage boys will get on there and get really defensive of me, of Josh. And my daughter doesn't like us being public at all. She doesn't like it at all. Because people get mean.
Well, let me ask you a question. Why are you public about?
Well, we did not intend to, again, ever tell anybody, but we reached out for help, is kind of, we were looking for help in the pro-life movement. And this is kind of going down another rabbit trail, but when the pro-life movement sees a story, especially, mothers from rape, there are several of us out there who are talking, but a couple going through this is unique. Yeah. And so people saw a story and kind of pushed us to share it. And so I was like, well, we'll share it with a small little blog. And that's what we did, thinking, well, we'll help. It was directed for other mothers from rape. And, and so that's what, we shared it with just one little blog, and it went viral. Like by the end of the week, it was picked up by a bunch of other outlets, and it had over 1 million direct shares to Facebook, and it just exploded. And we were so naive. We had no idea that was even a possibility. And we kept getting requests for reprints in dozens of languages all over the world. And I didn't know what was going to happen or how it was going to happen. And, they were talking about us in talk shows in California. And I mean, it was insane, and not favorably. People were not praising us. I mean, they were saying horrific things. We were getting all kinds of letters about we should be killed and the child should be sacrificed back to Satan. And I mean, really, it was not good.
Human being.
Yeah, no, we should both be killed. We it's less so now, but at the time it was a lot of rape porn and death threats. And I mean, all kinds of, it was bad. It was bad. Then I felt compelled to write kind of a follow-up article, because we didn't address a lot of people had reasonable questions, which we didn't address because I didn't think I was writing to the world, and then, but it really took on a life of its own. And
may I ask you, what are some of those questions? Would you like to address some of those right now?
It was just, well, how does she know it's not his? And I mean, I never talked about the vasectomy because it didn't matter. People asked, so that was one of them. Like, how does she know it's not his? Like, that wouldn't have occurred to us if it was possible. Like, I was just going to put this out there and things like that. I mean, like, oh gosh, that's a good point. I didn't think to check it. So that was one. And I'm trying to think.
Any questions that would help other women that you could answer?
I think I presented it as just, this was our story and this was what we did. And it turned into, I was shaming. That's a big one. She's shaming other women. She's shaming. And I was like, if you read anything, like if you go to our page, if you read anything and anything I've ever written and any interview I've ever done, anything I've ever said, if you find shame or condemnation in that, you were determined already to find it. Like, you were looking for it, because there's never been anything like that. That's not our heart. That's not our focus. You're making a decision, a life or death decision, in a time of high trauma, when your brain is still trying to save itself, and you're surrounded by by people who are telling you, if you abort, you can forget. And that's what I got on this ship from all kinds. If you abort, you can forget. If you abort, you can move on, and you'll never be able to have a life if you have this reminder, right in front of your face all the time. And I had Jeff,
What's your
and
what is your answer to those thoughts?
I well, again, that's not there is no forgetting. And that's the lie that, abort and you can forget, abort and you can move on. And if you keep the child, but no one calls it a child, if you keep it, you'll always have this reminder that you're living with. And one of my favorite things to say is, people ask, well, isn't your son a reminder? And I'll say, yes, he is. Joshua with his wild hair and his dimpled self and his big blue eyes, he's a beautiful reminder of women rising above their circumstances. And he's a reminder of love conquering hate,
That's
and good conquering evil, and my resilience, and our families binding together, and all of those beautiful things. That's what he's a reminder of. Absolutely. Have I ever looked at him and seen the attack? No. There are plenty of reminders of the rape. I wish I could erase them. I can't. But my son is just my son. He's just my child. And so I would just say that those are lies. Those are reasonable fears, and I think we all have them at some point during the pregnancy. What if I have my baby and all I see is the man who attacked me? What if I, and those can be talked about, those can be worked through. But in the end, the reminder of the rape is the rape, and that lives with you. And that's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be worked through. I'm a strong proponent of therapy. Post-traumatic stress is a very real, very dangerous thing. But the child is an innocent.
right.
The child didn't even exist at the time of the attack. You can't possibly put the blame on someone who wasn't even there.
Should the child pay for the
The
violence?
crime of another, right?
Yes, and no. Now, we know that some women in that trauma have chosen to abort.
Mhm.
And I know you have a heart for those women, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak to them.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I feel like when you're being bombarded with messages of, this will help you forget. I mean, we'd cut off our legs if it meant that we could forget what happened to us. And I just want to let you know that if that was you who aborted after rape, that there is no condemnation. There is forgiveness available to you, that Jesus forgives all, that there is nothing that we've done that can't be forgiven, that there is restoration and healing that can be found. um I talk to so many women who struggle with this, who battle with this, and there are people who get so angry at me, and say, well, I couldn't have done this. I couldn't have raised my rapist child, and abortion saved me. I couldn't have. And you don't know that. So if anyone's in that situation where they feel like they don't know that they can do this, I encourage them to talk to mothers who have walked this road, to women who have had children conceived in rape, and talk to us, because we've had all those same thoughts of, I don't know if I can do this, and what if I see the rapist child, and all of that. Ask us, because we know. If you ask women who've aborted after rape, they don't know, because they cut off their chance to, and that's heartbreaking. But it doesn't mean that there can't be healing and restoration. Um
So there is
and
compassion, and there is
absolutely.
hope, there's forgiveness, and there is restoration. If you've had an abortion, it is not the end.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So Jennifer, is there anything else you want to say? I think we've touched the points that you really wanted to share, but if there's something else, please do. And then also, I want you to let people know how they can connect with your ministry.
Yes. So we started, after rape, if you don't, the rates of suicide and self-harm and things like that, if you don't get help,
That's right.
are incredibly high. And I speak from experience, having attempted suicide um, after being in the spotlight and realizing that I wasn't okay, and not having anyone to reach out to and tell them I wasn't okay. Everyone in the pro-life movement is real eager to prop you up and call you a hero when you're doing well, and then when you're crashing, um, everyone kind of, it felt to me like everyone kind of went away.
But we're
So
supposed to enter each other's pain. We're supposed to
right,
agree with.
right. Well, I was with I was with the wrong crowd. I'm with a better, you have to kind of find your tribe, but there wasn't anything there wasn't an organization that I could reach out to when I wasn't all right. If you want to be, a speaker, or if you want to be known, if you want to be that, everyone's good with that. But if you're just hurting and broken, there wasn't anywhere for me. So I made something for when you're hurting and broken. And so we have Love Louder, and we have a 24-hour hotline, and that's text, that's voice, that's message, anything that you need. If you're not okay, if you need to talk, if you've just been raped, if you were, assaulted 40 years ago, it doesn't matter. If you became pregnant, if you didn't, if you aborted, if you didn't, whatever, if you just need to talk to someone who understands and who will love you unconditionally without judgment. If you need to know that you are seen and heard and believed, we are here for you. And if we can help you connect with post-abortive healing, we can help connect you with therapy. We can make sure you're in a safe place. If you were just assaulted and you need to be seen at the hospital, we can talk you through the rape kit. If it's the anniversary of your rape and you need to be on the phone 24 hours, on that day with someone, we can do that too. We've done that too. So that number is 833, the number 4, louder, LOUDER. Our website is www.lovelouder.com. We are Love Louder Inc. on Facebook. And yeah, we've got people at the ready. And my husband and I, our ministry is on Facebook as well. And that's Jeff and Jennifer Christie, Pro-Life for Every Life. And I answer all my messages, and I answer pretty much every comment on my page, even the nasty ones. And I love talking to people. So
Jennifer, it's taken quite a while for us to connect, but I'm so grateful. And I am so grateful that for your transparency, you haven't said, okay, fine, Jesus solves it all and everything is just fine. It's not. You have walked the journey, and you know that God is there and has been there for you. He is the answer, and that trusted friends are the answer too. We're not to do this life alone.
No.
And there is
we're not, and it's so easy to I call it turtling. I tend to turtle when I'm in pain. And so I have friends who see me turtle, and I've got them on turtle watch. And you need friends like that. We're not meant to be an island. We're meant to be, we're created to be in fellowship. And especially in this time, in this crazy pandemic time, that's why suicide rates and depression and all that have skyrocketed, because we're all so isolated. So I think now more than ever, reach out, if it's okay to not be okay. And that's, yeah. And I don't think that's something that's often said, especially in the Christian community. We're supposed to, Jesus is joy, and we're supposed to be okay, but sometimes we're not. And it's painful. The world and life can be hard and painful, and it's okay to admit that.
Exactly. And I think that's a really good message to get across.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
And we'll have the information when we post this. You'll be able to see it printed out so you can contact Jennifer. And thank you, Jennifer, very much.
Thanks so much.